Hi, my name is Sarah Mitchell. I never imagined the day my life would turn upside down. My husband, the man I trusted with everything, cheated on me. But what he didn't know was that I wasn't broken. I was just getting started. In this story, you'll see how I turned betrayal into power, and how my revenge left him with nothing. Stay tuned. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story from Family Feud files. Ryan and I looked perfect from the outside. That's what people always said. We had the kind of marriage others admired. Stable. Calm. Respectable. We lived in a quiet neighborhood. Waved at the same neighbors every morning. Hosted dinners where people complimented our teamwork as a couple. I believed those compliments. I believed the image. I believed him. I gave him my trust without hesitation. I supported his career. I adjusted my life around his ambitions. I convinced myself that love meant compromise, even when compromise started to feel like sacrifice. I didn't know I was slowly disappearing inside my own marriage. The distance didn't begin suddenly. It crept in slowly, so quietly that I blamed myself for noticing it. Ryan came home later than usual. His phone never left his hand. Conversations became shorter, colder, like he was always somewhere else even when he was sitting right in front of me. When I asked if something was wrong, he smiled and said he was just tired. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. The night I found out the truth wasn't special. It wasn't planned. It was painfully ordinary. I was standing in the kitchen, stirring soup, trying to bring back a sense of normalcy that had already slipped through my fingers. Ryan's phone was on the counter. Face down. Silent. I had no reason to touch it. I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't searching. Then the screen lit up. One message. One sentence. One moment that split my life in half. I still feel your hands on me. Last night was perfect. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even breathe. My body went cold, like it was trying to protect my heart by shutting everything else down. I stared at that message until the words stopped looking real. I told myself there had to be an explanation. A joke. A misunderstanding. Something. But my heart already knew the truth. When Ryan walked into the kitchen and saw me holding his phone, the look on his face destroyed whatever hope I had left. He froze. Just for a second. But that second told me everything. Guilt. Fear. Exposure. He tried to explain. They always do. He said it didn't mean anything. He said it was a mistake. He said he was confused. Every word felt like another betrayal layered on top of the first. I listened quietly, my heart breaking in a way that made no sound at all. I stared at the ceiling and replayed our entire marriage in my mind, searching for the moment it went wrong. I realized something terrifying. This wasn't new. This wasn't sudden. This had been happening for a long time. And that realization changed me. The crying came later. Quietly. Alone. In the bathroom with the door locked so he wouldn't hear me. But after the tears came something else. Something stronger. Something colder. Clarity. I stopped asking questions. I stopped reacting. I stopped confronting. Instead, I started watching. Listening. Noticing patterns I had ignored before. Late nights. Hidden accounts. Money that didn't add up. Lies that stacked too neatly to be accidental. Ryan thought my silence meant forgiveness. He thought I was weak. He thought I was still the woman who trusted him blindly. He was wrong. That was the moment I stopped being a betrayed wife and started becoming something else entirely. I didn't want revenge fueled by rage. I wanted justice built on patience. I wanted control. I wanted to make sure that when this marriage ended, I wouldn't be the one left with nothing. And as I lay there in the dark, listening to the man who broke me breathe peacefully beside me, I made a promise to myself. He would never see it coming. After the truth settled into my bones, something inside me went quiet. Not numb. Not empty. Just quiet in a way that felt dangerous. Ryan believed I was grieving. He believed I was trying to process the betrayal. He mistook my silence for confusion, maybe even desperation. In reality, that silence was where my strength was growing. I began to see my marriage differently. As if I had stepped outside of it and was watching from a distance. Every word Ryan spoke sounded rehearsed. Every apology felt calculated. He would say he loved me, then immediately glance at his phone. He would hold my hand, but his mind was never with me. It was with someone else. Somewhere else. I cried alone, late at night, in places he would never notice. In the shower, where the sound of water hid my sobs. In the car, parked blocks away from home. I allowed myself to feel the pain fully, because I knew something important. If I didn't let the pain pass through me, it would control me. And I refused to let him control anything ever again. During the day, I became observant. I paid attention to the things I once ignored. Ryan guarded his phone like it was an extension of his body. He slept with it under his pillow. He took calls outside. He deleted messages constantly. These were not the actions of a man who made a one-time mistake. These were habits. Patterns. Proof. Money was the next thing I noticed. We had always shared finances. Or so I thought. When I checked our joint account, I noticed transfers that didn't make sense. Small amounts at first, spread out just enough to avoid suspicion. Then larger withdrawals, labeled as business expenses. My chest tightened as I scrolled. This wasn't carelessness. This was planning. I didn't confront him. I copied everything. Each night, while Ryan slept, I sat at the dining table with my laptop, downloading statements, saving screenshots, building timelines. I backed everything up twice. Once on a hard drive hidden in my car. Once in a secure cloud folder. Every transaction told a story, and the story was clear. He was preparing for a future that didn't include me. What hurt most wasn't the money. It was the realization that while I was trying to save our marriage, he was quietly dismantling it. Ryan grew more confident as days passed. My calm reassured him. One evening, he even thanked me. He said he appreciated how understanding I was being. I smiled at him, feeling something twist deep inside my chest. He had no idea that my understanding was the most dangerous thing he could have asked for. At night, he would fall asleep quickly, exhausted from juggling lies. I would lie awake, listening to his breathing, wondering how someone could sleep so peacefully beside the person they betrayed. That question stopped haunting me once I accepted the truth. He slept well because he believed he was winning. I made an appointment with a lawyer without telling anyone. Walking into that office felt surreal. Like stepping into a different version of my life. I didn't cry there. I didn't need to. I laid out the facts calmly, methodically. The cheating. The hidden money. The timeline. The lawyer listened quietly, then looked at me and said something I will never forget. He said, "Sarah, you're not behind. You're ahead. He just doesn't know it yet." For the first time since discovering the affair, I felt something close to relief. I learned that infidelity wasn't just emotional betrayal. It had legal consequences. Financial consequences. Power shifts. Everything Ryan thought he controlled could be questioned, frozen, examined. The law didn't care about his excuses. It cared about evidence. And I had plenty. When I came home that day, Ryan kissed me on the forehead like everything was normal. He asked what I had done. I told him I went shopping. In a way, I wasn't lying. I had just shopped for my freedom. That night, I cried again. Not because I missed him. Not because I wanted him back. I cried for the woman I used to be. The woman who trusted without fear. The woman who thought loyalty was enough. I let myself mourn her fully, because I knew she was never coming back. In her place stood someone stronger. Someone quieter. Someone patient. Ryan had no idea that every day he stayed comfortable was another day. I was getting closer to ending everything on my terms. And I promised myself this. When he finally realized what was happening, it would already be too late. The more I learned, the calmer I became. And that calm terrified me more than my anger ever could. Every secret I uncovered stripped away another illusion I had once clung to. Ryan wasn't just cheating, he was rewriting our entire life behind my back. Quietly positioning himself as if I were already gone. I began documenting everything with a precision that surprised even me. I noted dates, times, locations, excuses. I learned his routines better than he knew himself. Tuesdays were late nights. Thursdays were work dinners. Saturdays were suddenly sacred, untouchable. I no longer asked where he was going. I already knew. There was a strange power in knowing the truth while pretending not to. Ryan spoke freely around me. He underestimated my intelligence, my awareness, my resolve. He talked about our future while secretly planning one that didn't include me. He talked about loyalty while betraying me without hesitation. Each contradiction hardened something inside me. One night, while he was in the shower, his laptop chimed. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I walked calmly into the office and opened it. There it was. Emails. Conversations. Hotel confirmations. Shared jokes. Shared memories that should have belonged to someone else. My hands trembled, but I kept going. I took photos of everything. I sent copies to myself. I closed the laptop exactly how I found it. When Ryan came to bed later, he wrapped his arm around me like nothing had happened. I stared into the darkness, realizing that the man lying beside me was capable of a level of deception I had never imagined. That realization broke something fragile inside me and replaced it with steel. The lawyer called a few days later. We discussed timing, strategy, silence. He told me something that felt counterintuitive at first. He said the most powerful move I could make right now was to do nothing. To let Ryan continue believing he was in control. To let him make mistakes. So I did exactly that. I played my role perfectly. I smiled at the right moments. I listened when he spoke. I nodded when he apologized without actually apologizing. I became the wife he thought he needed me to be: passive, forgiving, predictable. Inside, I was calculating every step. I opened a separate bank account in my own name. Quietly. Legally. I started redirecting my income. I updated passwords. I secured personal documents. Birth certificate. Marriage license. Insurance policies. Things I should have protected years ago but trusted him to safeguard. Every small action felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Ryan grew careless. Confidence does that to people. He left receipts in his pockets. He took calls too close to me. He forgot which lies he had told on which days. Each slip was another brick added to the wall that would eventually crush him. There were moments when the pain threatened to overwhelm me. Moments when I remembered the man I married. The laughter. The promises. The nights we stayed up talking about dreams. Those memories hurt more than the betrayal itself. But I didn't let nostalgia weaken me. Love without respect is just another form of loss. One evening, Ryan told me he was considering a business investment. He wanted my support. My signature. My trust. I looked at him, saw the hunger in his eyes, and realized something chilling. He believed I was still blind. I told him I trusted him completely. That was the moment I knew I had won. Because trust, when misplaced, becomes a weapon. And he had just handed me everything I needed. That night, I stared at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. She looked tired. Older. Wiser. Stronger. She wasn't waiting to be saved. Anymore. She was preparing to end something that had already died. Ryan thought his secret life was protected. He thought his lies were buried. He thought I would never fight back. He was wrong. The trap was already set. By the time everything started moving, Ryan still believed nothing had changed. That was the most painful and powerful part of it all. He laughed easily. He slept soundly. He planned trips he never intended to take with me. Meanwhile, my world had narrowed into focus, sharp and unforgiving. The first official move happened on an ordinary Monday morning. I remember the sunlight coming through the kitchen window. The smell of coffee, the sound of Ryan tying his shoes. He kissed my cheek and said he'd be late. I smiled and told him to drive safe. As soon as the door closed behind him, my hands started shaking. Not from fear. From anticipation. I drove straight to the lawyer's office. Everything we had prepared quietly was now activated. Paperwork filed. Requests submitted. Financial disclosures demanded. The process didn't explode all at once. It crept in, slow and suffocating. Exactly the way betrayal had crept into my marriage. Ryan called me that afternoon, confused. He said the bank had frozen one of his accounts. He laughed nervously, as if it were some harmless mistake. I told him I had no idea why that would happen. My voice didn't crack. My heart didn't race. I had practiced this moment too many times in my head to let it slip away. That night, he paced the living room. Phone pressed to his ear. Speaking in low, urgent tones. I sat on the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone. Watching his world begin to tilt. He didn't notice me. Panic makes people selfish. Fear narrows their vision. The following days were heavy. Mail started arriving. Official envelopes. Legal language. Words like review, disclosure, temporary restriction. Ryan stopped sleeping. His confidence drained out of him little by little. He snapped at small things. He forgot lies. He forgot himself. One evening, he finally confronted me. His voice wasn't angry. It was desperate. He asked if I knew anything about the investigation into our finances. He asked if I had talked to anyone. He searched my face for answers, for reassurance. For the woman he used to manipulate so easily. I looked at him and told him the truth, carefully selected, legally safe truth. I told him I was protecting myself. The silence that followed was louder than any argument we'd ever had. For the first time, he saw me differently. Not as a forgiving wife. Not as a passive partner. As a threat. That was when the emotional collapse truly began. Ryan started blaming everyone but himself. His job. Stress. Me. He said I was overreacting. He said it was just an affair. Just a mistake. The word "just" echoed in my head like an insult. As if betrayal could ever be small. What he didn't understand was that the affair wasn't the center of my revenge. It was the doorway. The real damage came from the lies, the financial manipulation, the disrespect. Those were things the law didn't ignore. Friends began to notice his unraveling. He stopped showing up. He avoided questions. His charm faded. People started asking me if everything was okay. I told them the truth, gently, without drama. I didn't need to destroy his reputation. He was doing that himself. At night, when the house was quiet, I sometimes felt the weight of it all crash into me. I cried into my pillow, mourning not the man he had become, but the future I once believed in. Revenge doesn't erase pain. It just gives it direction. Ryan slept on the couch now. Not because I asked him to, but because the space between us had become unbearable. He looked smaller somehow, like a man shrinking under the weight of his own choices. And yet, even then, I felt no pity. Only resolve. The legal process moved forward steadily. More accounts questioned. More inconsistencies revealed. The careful life Ryan had built on secrets was collapsing under the light of exposure. And he still didn't know the worst part. Because the affair partner hadn't been contacted yet. And when she was, everything would change. I used to wonder what kind of woman knowingly walks into another woman's marriage. I imagined someone heartless, careless, reckless. But when the affair partner finally entered my reality, I realized the truth was far more complicated and far more destructive. Her name was Emily. I didn't contact her myself. That would have been emotional, impulsive, messy. Instead, the law did what it does best. A formal request. A polite notice. A legal obligation to cooperate. No drama. No threats. Just facts and consequences. Ryan found out before she did. I could see it in his face when he came home that night, pale, shaken, struggling to keep his voice steady. He asked me, almost pleading, if there was any way to stop what was happening. He said Emily wasn't ready for this. That sentence alone told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about her. The call came 2 days later. Unknown number. I answered calmly. Emily's voice trembled as she spoke. She said she hadn't known he was married the way he claimed. She said he told her we were basically separated. She said she felt used. Lied to. Betrayed. Hearing her cry didn't comfort me. It confirmed something far more important. Ryan had been lying to both of us. Emily talked because fear makes people honest. She talked because lawyers scare people more than heartbreak ever could. She handed over messages, photos, timelines, things even I hadn't seen. Proof that the affair wasn't accidental, short-lived, or emotional confusion. It was planned. Sustained. Funded with money that belonged to both of us. When I reviewed the evidence, my hands shook. Not because it hurt. I was past that, but because I finally understood the full scope of his deception. Hotels charged to hidden cards. Gifts disguised as work expenses. Trips he claimed were conferences. He hadn't just cheated. He had invested in his betrayal. Ryan tried to fix things the only way he knew how, manipulation. He cried. He begged. He promised therapy. He promised change. He promised a future that no longer existed. I listened quietly, watching a man unravel in real time, stripped of the confidence that once protected him. I didn't interrupt him. When he finished, I told him something he wasn't prepared to hear. I told him I was done saving him. That was the moment he truly broke. The house felt different after that. Heavy. Tense. Like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Ryan moved through rooms like a ghost, avoiding eye contact, avoiding truth. His phone was silent now. No late-night texts. No secret smiles. The fantasy had collapsed, and reality was ruthless. Emily withdrew completely. She cooperated fully, then disappeared from our lives as quickly as she had entered. I didn't blame her. She had been collateral damage in Ryan's war against honesty. The legal pressure intensified. The evidence stacked higher. Every lie he told made things worse. Every attempt to minimize the damage only exposed more cracks. He had lost control, and he knew it. One night, as I packed important documents into a box, Ryan stood in the doorway watching me. His eyes were red. His voice was small. He asked me if I ever loved him. I looked at him and answered honestly. I told him I loved the man I thought he was. But that man didn't exist. I carried the box past him without another word. That was the night I realized something powerful. Revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, methodical, and devastatingly final. And the worst part for Ryan? The courtroom was next. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and sterile air. But to me, it smelled like victory. I walked in calmly, carrying only the weight of truth. Ryan followed, stiff, his suit crisp but his confidence shattered. For the first time, he wasn't charming. He wasn't clever. He was exposed, vulnerable, a man stripped to the core by his own choices. I sat quietly as the proceedings began. Every piece of evidence I had collected, every transaction, every message, every hidden hotel receipt, was presented in meticulous order. The lawyers spoke with precision, but I didn't need to understand every word. I knew the story. I lived it. I embodied it. And Ryan could see it in my eyes. He tried to speak, tried to argue. Tried to manipulate the judge and the jury with the ease he once used on me. But the proof was undeniable. Every lie collapsed under scrutiny. Every attempt at deception, documented. Every excuse, countered by hard facts. He looked smaller with each passing moment, his voice quieter, his face pale. He wasn't used to being powerless, and now he was completely exposed. The affair, the hidden accounts, the transfers, all of it came to light. Not in a sensationalist way. Not with drama or spectacle. Just truth, cold and precise, cutting through the facade he had built so carefully. I watched him falter, watched his bravado crumble. The man who once controlled everything, including my trust and our finances, was reduced to nothing by his own actions. When it was my turn to speak, I stood. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't waver. I spoke about betrayal. About trust. About the way one man's lies had tried to rewrite the life of another. I spoke about patience, about meticulous planning. About justice that doesn't roar but silently demands accountability. The courtroom listened. Ryan stared at me, mouth slightly open, unable to speak. He realized then that his attempts to charm, manipulate, and escape were futile. Every action he had taken against me had led directly to this moment. He had built his house of lies, and it was collapsing with no one to save it. The judge read the verdicts carefully, methodically. Assets frozen, transfers reversed, accounts returned, settlements in my favor. Ryan's control evaporated, piece by piece. He could no longer touch the money, the investments, or the future he thought he had stolen from me. The scale of consequences left him stunned, speechless, and finally entirely powerless. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate in front of him. I simply sat, calm, watching the man who had caused so much pain realize that every lie, every betrayal, had led him to this exact moment. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, precise, and devastatingly effective. Ryan slumped in his chair, defeated, broken, exposed. For the first time, I saw the man he really was. Stripped of all pretense, stripped of control. Stripped of the illusion of power. And in that moment, I felt no satisfaction in his suffering. I felt closure. I felt relief. I felt freedom. That night, the house was silent. The financial and emotional storm had passed. Ryan retreated to the shadows of the life he had created and lost. I moved through the rooms, collecting documents, reviewing accounts, ensuring that nothing he could manipulate remained. Everything was accounted for. Everything was secured. Everything he had tried to steal, control, or hide was back where it belonged with me. I realized that revenge isn't about humiliation. It isn't about anger. It's about justice, precision, and reclaiming what's rightfully yours. And I had done it without drama, without spectacle. Without losing myself in the process. Ryan had nothing. Not power. Not control. Not trust. Not respect. He had built his own downfall, and I simply let it unfold. The morning after the verdict felt unreal. I woke up before the sun, made coffee, and walked through the quiet house. Everything was calm, almost serene. The chaos, the lies, the betrayal, the late nights, the tears, all of it had led to this moment. Ryan's empire, his control, his illusion of power, had crumbled completely. And I was free. I found him in the study, sitting in his chair, staring at the documents that spelled out his defeat. For years, I had feared losing myself in anger, in revenge, in bitterness. But looking at him now, I realized something. This wasn't about me punishing him. This was about reclaiming my life. My dignity. My peace. And I had done it. He looked up, eyes hollow, face pale, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sarah, what now?" I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence stretch, let him feel the weight of everything he had lost. That silence was louder than any shouting, more cutting than any insult. It spoke of patience, planning, precision, and his ultimate failure. I finally said, calmly, "Now? Now I live." And it was true. I had been so focused on uncovering the truth, on collecting evidence, on building my case, that I forgot one simple thing: the person I was fighting for most was me. Not my marriage. Not my husband. Me. Ryan's shoulders slumped. He no longer had a place in my life. The accounts, the investments, the freedom he thought he could take from me all returned. His reputation, once carefully curated, lay in ruins. He had nothing left. Nothing to control, nothing to manipulate, nothing to claim. He realized, finally, that every lie, every betrayal, every stolen moment of my life had only tightened the noose around him. I left him there, in the house that had witnessed both our love and our lies. I walked outside into the sunlight, into freedom, into a future I could finally shape for myself. The weight of fear, doubt, and betrayal lifted. And for the first time in years, I felt whole. Whole, strong, unstoppable. The revenge wasn't about him breaking. It was about me rising. And I had risen. Every late night I cried alone. Every sleepless moment spent planning. Every careful decision, it had all led here. I had not only reclaimed my life, but I had done so with precision, dignity, and control. He had left me nothing. But I had taken everything back and more. Looking back now, I understand the strange power of patience, observation, and planning. Betrayal can break you, but it can also awaken you. It can teach you about strength you didn't know you had. About focus and strategy, about resilience. I was no longer the woman who trusted blindly, who loved without caution, who forgave without consideration. That woman was gone. And in her place stood someone wiser, stronger, and untouchable. Ryan may have believed he could destroy me, but in reality, he only revealed my true power. And in that revelation, I found freedom, closure, and triumph. My husband cheated. And my revenge left him with nothing. But I gained everything I had ever lost: my trust in myself, my dignity, my independence, and my life back. And that's how it all ended. My husband cheated. And I took everything back. Not with anger, not with rage, but with patience, planning, and strength. The man who tried to control my life was left with nothing, while I reclaimed everything that was mine: my dignity, my freedom, and my life. If you loved this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share Family Feud files, because stories like this deserve to be heard. And remember, real power comes from staying calm when everyone else underestimates you.